Greetings, happy coders. Welcome to another video, a little bit different one. This is me in the flesh. Here I am. Hope you're all doing well. I'm absolutely fine. I know I haven't done many updates recently, but life's all fine for me. Everything's good. But it has been a bit quiet, I suppose, because before I was kind of live on Twitch every night for what, 2 or 3 months or so, coding Lunar Rescue. I kind of set out with the idea of coding a whole game live, recording all the footage and all of that stuff, and I obviously managed to do it, but oof, by the end, I really was I'd had enough. It was pretty intense, and I do live here in Central Asia, as some of you know, so the time difference meant I was going to be up at kind of silly hours. I mean, even now here it's about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, so just couldn't keep that up. Um, but I have been busy. I have been coding, and I've been thinking about a few things, especially to do with things like AGDX, obviously, which the kind of it's the kind of productivity tools that I added to original AGD, and I really like using those tools. But AGDX is kind of it's been superseded, maybe you might say. There's MPAGD, and I think Jonathan's got AGD5 and various other things. So I don't think many people are really using it anymore, which is absolutely fine. Things move on. But I really like those tools, and I wanted to carry on using them. So that's one of the things that I've been working on. Um, Thinking about how I can use those tools to create some more games and work with developers, people I enjoy working with, and be creative. I really enjoy that kind of community thing. So yeah, it's been I've been reflecting on that, and yeah. So AGD, I guess it's a brilliant tool. Really, it's a brilliant, let's say, an enabler. It's a really great enabler. It allows middle-aged blokes like us to make their own games and publish them and kind of realize a dream, if you like. And it's done probably more for the Spectrum homebrew scene than any other tool. And myself and plenty of others really owe a debt of gratitude to Jonathan Caldwell for coding it. Um, but speaking personally, there comes a point where I suppose you might say that what originally was a bridge started to feel like a wall. Um, as I said, it's a great tool for what it does, but the kind of games I wanted to write, I really needed to move on. And I obviously, more recently, the games I have written have been in pure assembly. But I did like those old tools, and they do enable people to work alongside me. So Andy, for example, when we've worked on games, he often still uses those tools. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking, what could I do? How could I kind of bring everything together, if you like? And so I decided something I've been talking about for a while, but just never really got got the um, got the nerve, I suppose you could say, to do. But I decided take the plunge, and I'm coding my own game engine, right? So rather than modifying AGD or taking whatever else, starting from scratch and coding it the way that I would want it to be to suit myself. That doesn't mean it's better, doesn't mean it's worse, just means it's different, suits me, works well with what Andy wants to do with his games, and there's a couple of other people I work with as well who I think we'll probably do some stuff together using that as well. So the idea is that I'll write the engine and the data, so the graphics and the levels and all of that stuff and the design that AGDX has, the designers and the tools, we can still use all of those, but then we export the data into a totally new engine, which is designed so that it's all in assembly and it can be customized. And like I said, AGD, it's a great tool, but the games tend to feel the same. Any kind of game design tools usually have that because they're designed to be a one size fits all sort of thing. I'm not knocking it. It's absolutely fantastic that so many people have made games in it. Um, but speaking personally, I got to the point where I really wanted to each game to have its own feel, and that's why I code in assembly now, right? So I thought, well, how can I combine what I'm doing with the assembly code with the design tools? So keep the design tools, work with the assembly, join them together, and start making games that way, right? So what it ultimately means, I suppose, is that we can design, as I said, we can design levels and sprites and everything else, but then we can have a totally different engine that uses all the features that I would like to have. A lot of the things that I was adding to AGD, but never quite got them to bolt together really. You know, they were all they were all, because when you start with an engine, you've got to then add to it, and sometimes, you know, square pegs round holes kind of a deal really. So I figured, let's go back, we'll write an engine, we'll design it in the way with all of the things that I know I want, because after all this time working with AGD and other things, I know the things that I want to do. I know the things that are possible. I kind of got to this point where I'm able to do it. So yeah, that's basically what I've been doing. And I can sort of drag this in and show you. Let me just shift myself over. So this is one of Andy's old games, and we've been a while ago. Actually, we did quite a lot of rework on this game in terms of the graphics and sprites, and that was within AGDX. But we hit that wall, and we just couldn't take it any further. And it wasn't the game we wanted. It just wasn't. We were asking too much of the software. So I realized I'd have to go back and do the code from scratch to make it work, and that's what I've managed to do. In the last few weeks, I've been coding this game engine, so I'm gonna put this up here on the screen, and then I'll just talk over a few little things, right? So I guess, so obviously this is 4x3, so it doesn't fit so well. Don't know if I can. Actually, I can probably do this. Just give me a second. Yeah, I guess that's all right, isn't it? There I am, just peeking over there. Right, so yeah, this is a game called Monty's Honey Run. You may be familiar with it. It's Andy John's first game, and it's a game that that was quite well received. But obviously, that Andy was learning as well at the time, and he wasn't. It was a good game, but I think Andy would say that looking back, he'd like to have done some of the things differently. So that's why we've chosen this one to start with. Yeah, this is, at the moment, it's a very basic game engine. But maybe the first thing that you would notice, which is different to AGD, is that the player sprite is fully masked. And I've been dabbling in code where I've managed to do this without a sprite, without a background buffer, right? So that's really important because it saves a huge amount of memory for 48K. In the past, I've managed to do that, but only in 128K. But this works fine in 48K, which is great because obviously you can run it on 48K machines, but also that frees up almost, you know, 6 or 7K in a bank, which can be used for potentially for game levels and stuff like that. The other thing you might notice, of course, is that there are extra frames. I'm using them here to do this kind of somersault thing. It actually uses about 10 or 12 extra frames. Now, in AGD, that would be almost impossible because of the amount of memory that it would use. You wouldn't have a lot left for enemies and various other things, but this has both directions and everything. The reason for that is that it's coded so that, again, went back to the drawing board and coded it so that the sprites are 32 bytes, and it uses tables to do the calculations. It's workable, right? You know, it's not, there are always sacrifices, right? When you do this kind of thing, there are always compromises. Everything is a compromise, but I don't know if you can see, you see the little border here. This is just a timing border, and this little red bit here is telling me how many cycles are being used to sort of draw the sprite. You can see how the red border flickers a little bit as I'm walking, so that's because of the shifting. When the sprite's perfectly aligned, it doesn't need to shift. So what I'll have to do when I'm coding this is take that into account with the raster beam timer, so that the timing is the same all the time. This uses a very similar, let's say not the same engine, but a similar technique to what I did with Lunar Rescue. So it's raster beam timed, and that again is really important, because if you look at the animation and if you look at the screen itself, there will be absolutely zero flicker at all, no tearing. You know, it's really sharp. And that's because I'm using a technique which times the raster beam for draw and undraw. Something I've spoken about when I was coding Lunar Rescue. We ran into a few issues, but ultimately got it working. So I kind of feel like should be okay with this. It's not going to be easy, but I reckon we'll be fine. And I'm hoping we should be able to get the player sprite and then probably at least another 8 sprites, I would hope. Whoops. And actually, that's an interesting thing. It just shows you how the masking works. The masking, again, to save memory, I'm not using individual masks per frame. Instead, the mask gets generated on the fly. Depending on the player, so it's generated from the tile setup. It's kind of complicated. I don't really want to go into too much detail, but we don't need a background buffer, as I said. Instead, we're drawing the data from the tiles in the background, creating a very small buffer, right? So there is a buffer, but it's only about 48 bytes. 48 bytes, right? So it's about 48 bytes, and it does it on the fly. Now, the good thing about that is it doesn't have to happen while the sprite is being drawn. So you just need to find a place within the raster beam, you know, after the sprites have been drawn, you know, at the bottom of the screen, at some point where you can fit that in, and that's then used for drawing the sprite as a background. It's basically a circle. It's basically that, yeah, just a circle around the sprite. And it only works on the player sprite. This is I said, you know, compromises. So the enemy sprites are not masked, but the player sprite is. But I think that's actually going to be all right, because most of the time the enemies are not climbing up ladders or you know, going in front of platforms and stuff. So at least with these games. That's not to say that we can't kind of adapt the code to have masking for the other sprites as well, but sort of like what I did with Donkey Kong, I suppose. But that you probably would need to use memory. One of the things I'm still not sure about is sound, so we'll have to see how that works. With Lunar Rescue, it was tricky to implement in 48K. So that's one to think about, I suppose. But we'll see how we go. It's all very much in the planning stages at the moment, I suppose. But as you can see, yeah, it's running nice. It's running very smoothly. It's all sort of good, really. Obviously, plenty to do yet, but yeah, doesn't quite work in the water, does it? But it's not too bad. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And so the plan really is to kind of use this, as I said, and last year, obviously, we set up this label, Midnight Brew, which is, I'm hoping, going to develop into a sort of old school kind of software house, you know. Obviously, there are people who put out Spectrum games and on cassette and so on, but they're not really connected with the coders and the development process. So instead, what I'm hoping is we'll have a sort of philosophy, which is that we'll work with certain developers that we like, and we'll develop games and we'll collaborate and we'll help them to improve, make the games better, give them polish. You know, perhaps one of the nice things that people would be able to do is use a tool like AGDX as a kind of testing ground, You can create a few little bits and pieces. That's a great thing with AGD. You can get a few things up and running really quickly to test ideas and how they feel. So we can use that as a testing tool, and then say, great, that looks good. Let's put it into the new engine. We'll save a load of memory. We'll make it faster. We'll make it smoother. You know, we can have, by keeping the data and the code separate, we'll be able to use all of the 128K, so there can be, you know, extra levels and so on. So yeah, that's, to be clear then, that's, it's not going to be like a new AGD or MPAGD. It's not a general tool for people to create games. Those things are great, as I said, and those are out there for people to use. What this is really is, it's like an in-house tool, if you like, and it'll be available to the people who I work with, and also, of course, I should mention the people who support me on Patreon. So that's a really important part of this, because without that, I just wouldn't be able to free up the time to do it. So the idea would be that Patreon can be kind of play testing. Obviously, they'll get all the games as well. If you do support me on Patreon now, you get all the games that I've done. There's about sort of 9 or 10 games, I think, plus lots of other bits and pieces. So I'm doing a bit of a plug for that right now, because I really would love to get a few more supporters to help with this. And the idea then is that if I'm working with other developers, can kind of increase the amount of games that we put out, and also you know, really push the limits of the system and really get some really high quality games put out there as well, by being a little bit more organized, and then put them out on the Midnight Brew label for people to buy on cassette or digital or whatever. And that way we can also feed some of that back to the developers as well, and involve the community. And so basically just bring all of the different things together that I really like about working in the Specky community, so to speak. So doing the design tools, coding the games, collaborating with other people, putting out games. This is my cat. She's messing about. She's just here. Some of you will know Alice, of course. She's obviously decided to join in. You can't see her right now, but she's, look. Is that her there? Oh, can we see? No, she's gone again. I don't know where she is. If she comes back, she'll put in an appearance. Anyway, yeah, she's doing fine. For those of you that are curious, she started out as a very tiny, tiny little kitten. She's now a young cat, still just as mischievous as ever. And yeah, anyway, that's basically what I'm thinking. So if you guys like the sound of that and you'd like to get on board and support it, then obviously, you know, I'd love you to come and join the Patreon and help with that. It really does make a difference. Gonna help to make new games for the Specky, better games, you know, and you'll be part of something, and you'll get all of them, you know, you'll get all the games included. So that's kind of the way. Wait, here she is. I think let me see if I can get her on camera before I go. But that's pretty much it. So that's my video for today. Alice, you come in here? You come in? You come in to say hello? Come on. Cats don't really do commands, do they? I'll go down there and get you. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Don't need the headphones. Here she is. She's quite big now, as you can see, and definitely always up for a fight, aren't you? Always. All right, guys. Thanks a lot, and you know, I'm not going to give up on the Twitch thing. I will come back now and again. I just can't do that. Can't do it all the time. Just a bit too much. Got a few other things lined up with outside work as well, so I'm probably going to be a little bit too busy to have those late nights as well. But anyway, it's good night from me, and it's good night from Alice, and we'll see you soon. Take care, and as always, Happy coding. Bye-bye.